This is Addison Shonland at AirInsight, and today is April the 30th, and we're going to talk about an interesting new cabin seat technology idea. My guests are John Walton, who is a passenger experience expert and well-known in this space, notoriously well-known in this space. My other guest is Phil Cornell, who is the founder of PM First. And Phil's been working on this project. He's going to show us his thing today. He's working on this for more than 2 years. He has a background in global energy politics, which has afforded him a great deal of travel, probably in the wrong comfort seat level, which helped him come up with this idea. So Phil, why don't you show us what you got? Explain.
Thanks very much, Addison. Let me share my screen. So you see it all here?
Yep, that's good.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Addison, and it's great to have John on the line as well. So as Addison mentioned, we've been working on PM First for a couple of years. Essentially, what we've built is an economy class sleeper. So it's a kit that we can use to transform rows of empty standard economy class benches into luxury lie-flat and enclosed lie-flat sleeper cabins in just a few seconds between flights, with a kit that snaps simply into the crossbars between the armrests on all standard economy class seat models. This has been FAA review and certification is pending. We are hoping to have this product ready off the shelf for airlines towards the end of the year, particularly as they start to emerge from the current COVID crisis, and will be battling issues of inventory optimization and particularly of maintaining social distancing inside the cabin. So we think that this is a tool not only to allow airlines to optimize their inventory on even a fluctuating basis, but especially in the near future, and also as a health and safety tool for the realities of what it's going to be like on the cabins as we come out of this crisis.
Phil,
it can fit very simply into an overhead container, so the kit itself is very small. Yes, please, Addison.
So, sorry, the lower picture, I'm looking at that, and it appears that there is sort of, I guess there's a mattress, then under the mattress there seems to be a surface that would be across the seats and the space between the seats. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So what we have is a sort of 3-paneled folding bed mattress surface that folds into the kit that you see in the overhead container there. And it cantilevers connected to the seat, the seat bench structure, and also includes this sort of cabin wall, this sort of upholstered cloth fitting that goes over the seat backs, that can also contain various different kinds of technologies. Here we've included just sort of a basic lighting setup, and also a curtain to enclose the space. So yes, the fundaments are a cantilevered mattress surface that folds out and can be installed onto these seats in a few seconds.
Got it. Thank you.
So as we said, this is, we think, not just a bed, right? So we can achieve this flat surface and create sort of particularly on 3 seats, a lie-flat surface that's just shy of 5 feet. It's a little above 4.5 feet. Depending on the width of the economy class seats, but also to create really a sort of nice enclosed environment for the passenger. So here again, we see sort of a basic lighting system that we can control either via hard switches or via a tablet computer or even the customer's tablet. And we can also mix and match different kinds of technologies, for example, like virtual reality goggles. So the benefit of having packages that come on and off the airplane is the ability to bundle different kinds of services. We also have a certified takeoff and landing position. So the aisle panel on the aisle seat flips back. So for a takeoff and landing, the passenger is actually seated normally in the aisle seat. And when they reach cruising altitude, the passenger themselves can take the panel, fold it back, and then crawl into their cabin, which allows not only for a lie flat position, but also a seating position for eating, for example, or obviously for takeoff and landing, and also a backrest that allows for sort of a sit up in bed situation inside the cabin. So it can be used for relaxed lounging as well as sleeping. So there are other economy class sleepers that have been on the market. I think Sky Couch by Air New Zealand is the most well known. Obviously, the difference here between, let's say, Sky Couch and Puma Sofa with PM First is that these are brand new seat infrastructures that need to be installed, and they are usually constructed in conjunction with a seat maker. The benefits of having a separate kit that can be installed means that you have improved flexibility, and also no need to set up in flight. So for example, for some of these existing Sky Couch and Puma Sofa, a cabin crew needs to adjust in flight. Another product that was on the market last year until the demise of the airline was the sleeper seat by Thomas Cook, which was similarly a mattress that could be sort of laid on top of seats, but that just created a basic flat surface. It was designed for center seats, also a row of 3. The passenger was not allowed to eat or stay there during takeoff and landing or for meals. And it doesn't offer any of the kind of tech enablement or essentially the privacy also that we think PM First allows. And that privacy of being enclosed, including a curtain, is I think one of the things that makes it really key when airlines are thinking about how to rearrange their cabins in an innovative way, not only to monetize all of those seats, but also to protect against interaction between customers, different kinds of biological produce that can cause the spread of the disease. So we think that what we have is something that is much more comfortable, much more flexible, and also much more applicable to the current health situation. So this has been designed in a few different ways that can be offered by the airline. Our primary design is as an ancillary sale. This is what we recommend. So essentially a passenger it could be offered an upgrade either at check-in or even just a day before check-in by email, or even on board the plane, depending on how many seats have been unsold by the airline. So what this allows us to do is on a flight-by-flight basis, depending on the inventory that's left in the flight, as long as the airline can consolidate all of the unsold seats towards the back, which is just a question of seat map blocking, we can then install those kits on a flight-by-flight basis in order to maximize that use of the space and be able to monetize all the seats that were left unsold otherwise. And because we're selling seats that are only unsold, that also allows for a very, very low price point so that bed spaces or PM First cabins aren't competing with passengers that are otherwise buying seats. Obviously, and so for an operations point of view, this would also mean that the airline would then report the unsold consolidated inventory, either the airline itself or ground crew, and we can talk about partnerships that we've developed with ground crew, can deliver and install those kits. And then at the bedding can be changed out, for example, at the Spoke Airport while the kits stay on. So we would just change out, for example, duvets and pillows, and then we would have hub airport operations, for example, from a ground crew perspective, or at a pinch, cabin crew can also take these off themselves and store them either in overhead bins or underneath the plane. Now, in the context of COVID-19 and the benefits of this product for filling unsold seats, of course, kits can stay up as long as you need them to be up. So we can also imagine a scenario where, for example, the last 10 rows of an airplane, for example, are filled with PM First cabins. And if we are sure to expect relatively low load factors in the market as it is, or as it starts to look at the end of 2020 when the recovery starts to happen, then these can stay up for as long as are necessary, while only the bedding and the pillows are exchanged in and out. And at the other hand, the good thing is that we can also remove these at will for deep cleaning, so that we can also ensure a much more clean environment as the carrier or the passenger or the health situation might require, which offers a superior product to just whatever we can do on the seats between the flights. So of course, pre-booked and also operations for cabin crew and cabin rest are also clear benefits of the product. So fundamentally, we've designed PM First as a leasing and revenue share model. So what we would like to do is to be able to provide a new revenue stream to airlines without any capital cost on their end. So that would allow us to continue to generate revenue over the long term. And obviously, what we want to do is be providing passengers with the cheapest bed in the sky. Over the medium term, what we're looking to do is be able to centralize inventory management and enable continuous upgrades of our PM First cabins. So what we can do is from the first introduction, because the units are relatively easy to remove and then replace, we can be constantly upgrading based on passenger feedback and also based on different kinds of technologies that we might choose or the carrier might choose to invest into those products over the lifespan of the usage. And obviously that's a huge upgrade from existing expensive seats that would require brand new infrastructure replacements with different kinds of service upgrades. And we would also like to be able to tie in with different kind of partners to integrate those different kinds of technologies, for example, virtual reality. And also we think this provides unique marketing opportunities. So particularly in a pre-booked kind of scenario, we can imagine being able to personalize even the physical space to what the customer might want. So that could mean bundling different kinds of products or even providing a different model of cabin depending on sort of the look and feel that a passenger might want. And again, those are sort of benefits that we can see further down the line. Where is the company right now? Well, our tactical goal, as we said, is to launch this product by the end of the year. So it's to produce initial certified units and then to conduct in-flight trials with an initial test carrier. And we also think that in the early stages of the product, that might include also providing direct unit sales to the airline. So instead of a leasing and revenue share, we would be flexible, particularly on a testing basis, to sell those units directly to the airline to use how they want. So provide some flexibility at the front. So just in terms of how the costing looks on this, we have modeled based on an estimated marginal, so per use cost of the unit at about $25. We've modeled a minimum customer price point for the passenger of an upgrade of $75. So we think that's extremely cheap. So that would be $75 on top of an existing ticket price, economy class ticket price. And that compares to the current market price point of $275. And that was taken from the Thomas Cook offering last year, where they chose a £200 price point for their bed rentals. So we've modeled at both of those price points for customers. And under that modeling, you can see that on only one route, we can provide in normal operation time, so with an average of 85% load factor on a route that might be using an A350 on a daily route, over $1 million of extra revenue on an annual basis to the airline with the usage of this product without any capital costs. So what we're looking to do, as we said, is to test and roll this out by the end of 2020. We have had, in 2019, we had a really exciting year. We were shortlisted for the Crystal Cabin Award in March. We were also finalists for the Future Travel Experience Ancillary Startup Competition, which afforded us the ability to show at FTE in Istanbul and also to provide some kind of presentation to the audience hall. And we had already pre-arranged an entire certification and launch process with our certification partners. And that entire process was going to take 5 to 6 months from signing by a carrier. So actually our strategy last year was to sign directly with airlines who would then fund the testing and rollout of our product. Where we are this year, given what's happened to the industry, and given the fact that we want to have this off the shelf and ready to go by the end of 2020 when airlines are ready to re-engage business on a fuller basis, is to work with a new production partner in Europe. And so we can, and the current production schedule is to get this started ASAP. And again, under the schedule that we have here, have full product ready before the end of the year. So in addition to just the revenue streams from passengers and the ability to monetize all of those extra seats as ancillary upgrades, we think that there's a lot of future different revenue streams that airlines would be available to take advantage of here. So we talked about bundled different kinds of technologies, the fact that it can be a marketing platform. And of course, in future growth, we talked about the pre-booking that allows to really give a personalized experience to passengers. So we think that the future of flying and the future of the industry will really be about modularity and the ability to take bog standard kind of infrastructures inside airplanes, so particularly economy class seating, which tends to be the same experience and a commodity style experience, and allow to sort of plug and play different kind of experiences with kits like ours, starting with the one that we have, but then just to sort of create a new model where we can not only use all the space and optimize the interior space, but also provide something that's very unique and personalized to the customer. So this is our team. So I founded this company a couple of years ago with my engineering partner, Justin Grant, in San Francisco. We have a great advisory board, and we have worked and built partnerships with some top service providers in order to not only provide options to carriers and potential customers for example, services on the ground, but also to complete all of the certification and manufacturing that we need to do in order to bring this to market as quickly as possible and be able to provide airlines what they need. The next steps that we'd like to take, obviously, are to complete this manufacturing. Our product version 2.0 is that we're in the context of making at the moment. We want to include, for example, a universal attachment so that we can provide one unit that would be able to work on several different seat models. Currently, what we have are exchangeable clips, so we can take one standard model kit and just change out the hooks that are necessarily to attach them to the seat, depending on the various seat models that an airline might have. But we'd like an airline to be able to adapt those, perhaps if they have several different seat models on different airplanes or different flights, to be able to easily adapt that. And then obviously to take airlines' inputs and customer inputs so that we can upgrade the interior to whatever kind of aesthetics or add-ons that they might want. And then to complete that certification and get the manufacturing done in order to mobilize and scale as quickly as possible to meet the demand that we're expecting from the industry, particularly in this current environment. So that's just a quick presentation going through. I'm very happy to have a conversation and ask any questions you might have.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's fascinating. Tell me first of all why you decided to go for the rows of 3 rather than perhaps rows of 4. Is there anything that would stop you doing that if you wanted?
No, in fact, we have a design on the table in order to adapt this to a row of 4. Obviously, that's much nicer from a size perspective and can accommodate much larger passengers. Currently, with 3 seats, we think that at about 6 foot to 6 foot 1 inch is about the limit for comfortably lying down in a product on 3 seats. I think the issue that we went with 3 is that obviously this is a much more universal fitting for airlines. So the 4-seat configurations tend to be sort of on either older model, A330s or 777s in some cases, models that are really being phased out at the moment. The future for particularly long haul and lower cost long haul, where we think this is a particularly good fit, is going to be new generation wide bodies, so like the A350 or the 787, and of course the real future here, which we think is narrow body long haul flights, and in those kind of cases, particularly thinking about the A321 long range those are always going to be 3-3 configurations. So we want to be able to fit as many cabins as possible. Pardon me, and to be able to still provide a product that even on 3 seats is a huge comfort upgrade for passengers. But we want to be able to hit as much of the market as possible, because if you look at the statistics, even just last year when the airline industry was going full steam, we still had over 700 million economy class seats that were flying empty around the world every year. So if we can grab the larger part of that market, which is probably going to be on the 85 to 90% of those that are going to be in a 3-seat configuration, not in a 2 or a 4-seat configuration, we want to be able to address that.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of your distribution, though, you're not planning on making it available at booking. Is that correct?
Well, so this is really up to the airline, right? So what we want to do is provide a tool to the airline for inventory management, and then be able to implement it in the way that best fits an airline's marketing or business model. And so we've heard very different feedback from different airlines. Of course, low-cost airlines tend to prefer, for example, taking care of the units themselves with their own cabin crew. And for example, providing this really as an ancillary sale in the way I described. But if you have a full-service airline, they might prefer more having ground crew take care of the operations and being able to provide this as a pre-booked option. So these are really both feasible. And we've provided a few different models or possibilities or suggested sales possibilities for airlines that we can offer them. Obviously, just the pricing model changes a little bit. So if you offer them in a pre-booked sense, we would just, it would need to fit into the existing airline algorithm, depending on how they see load factor on that particular flight to be. And so on a very full flight, for example, at a holiday, you could assume that the cabins then would sell for essentially 3 times of an economy class ticket, which would still be, about 1/3 or less of a premium seat at the front of the plane or any other lie flat option, but significantly more expensive than we can offer to the customer as an ancillary.
Yeah.
Phil, could I ask you to stop sharing your screen for a moment, please?
Stop staring at the screen?
Sharing your screen.
Ah, pardon me. Yes.
That's easier for us. Now all 3 of us are in the picture here. Sorry, John, if you have any more questions, please go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so my question here is like this. The idea of lying flat in an economy space at that price point, that's a very attractive selling feature. How long, and I guess this is a question for not just Phil, but also for John, what do you think would be the optimal, not optimal, let's say the minimal flight length where a passenger is going to say, you know what, I'd like to buy that bed? It seems to me that there would be a trade-off that the longer the flight, the more people would pay for it. So you've got this fixed price thing, but let's say I want the bed for 2 hours or 6 hours. We're getting into unbelievably long flights now.
10 hours for the A321 XLR, absolutely. Yeah.
Right, and remember WOW Air flying a 321 LR from Reykjavik to LA?
Yeah.
I mean, that was like unbearable just to think about it, particularly on ULCC. But what would anybody pay for a bed on that plane? Hundreds.
Yeah, so I mean, we think that the price point is as high as the market can bear. Again, the current data points that we've used have been the Thomas Cook experience, where they sold these at £200 a pop. But we think that obviously the need or the desire for a lie flat seating option, particularly on a ultra low cost, where, for example, they're trying to market to business passengers who want to be sure that they have a full night's rest. We want to be able to offer that to them at a factor less. So we're talking about not just maybe 1/3 of the cost, but 1/10 of the cost of what a business class seat would cost. In terms of the flight distance, totally with you that there's sort of a minimum flight time that would be interesting for lying down and sleeping. The kind of flight times that we want to target as a minimum would be red-eye flights, for example, transcontinental inside the US. So if you think about flying, for example, from the West Coast to the East Coast on an overnight flight, got a lot of ultra low cost flights that are flying those kind of routes. Very, very few options, even among the full service airlines for lie flat services. And so we think that for a lot of those kinds of companies that are, looking to fly their consultants or whatever they are, even on 4.5-hour flights, but where they need to arrive rested the next day, this could be a huge and very cost-effective use of space and of money. So we're looking at that kind of 4.5-hour plus flights, and that easily covers, of course, any kind of transatlantic, and particularly or North America to South America, where the XLR is currently flying.
Yeah. I mean, it strikes me that you also have the potential for a market in the sort of European sun, sea, and sand market, right? So Northern Europe to the Canaries, for example, depending on where you start in Northern Europe, that's what, 3 and a bit hours from France, 4 and a bit from the UK, 6 from Helsinki, right? You're a family with 2 kids. This is going to look absolutely attractive, right? Except what's interesting is that while the others have been to an extent sort of aimed immediately at kids, right? All the marketing is involved, children. So New Zealand even has a special way to tie your children down to the seat, etc. Sorry, child restraints, I think we're supposed to call them. But same with Puma Sofa, right? When June did it, it was all about, entertain the kids, stop the sick children from running around the plane kind of thing. Whereas the Aristonar thing has been really interesting in that it's really focused as a sort of business class offering, or at least a business travel offering. Do you have a sense, Phil, about what the different success has been in terms of marketing this as for families and kids versus for frequent flyers kind of thing? Because fundamentally, those are 2 types of traveler who want to be as far away from each other as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, I think you're exactly right that that the family approach has been more successful, and it depends on the carrier, right? So particularly for Asian carriers, and where the Sky Couch was adapted, for example, to ANA as Couchy, that was marketed very much as a family option, and same for China Airlines. So I think it really depends what's the market of the existing carrier that we're talking about. I think also family options are going to be particularly important for example, carriers in the Middle East. Obviously, what we want to offer is something that is flexible and modular, depending on what the airline and what their customer base is more interested in. For something like transatlantic or for transcontinental on low cost, we think that those could often be also business travelers. And when you look to some of the low cost long haul industry, they sort of have 3 major Valhallas, or 3 major things that they're trying to pitch. So one is to obviously maximize the use of the aircraft. The other one is to maximize their ancillaries, and the third one is to market to much more higher value customers than they're able to achieve normally. And that really means business travelers. So to the degree that they can be courting some of those business travelers onto low cost long haul, I think it'll be aimed more at a business kind of segment. So we want to, but I think the benefit of what PM First can do is to offer even more kid friendly or more business friendly kits. So unlike, again, either Sky Couch or Puma Sofa, where you have installed units that are sort of inflexible on the plane, we can offer different kinds of experiences that might be better tailored to those different kinds of markets and allow that kind of flexibility that the other products can.
Well, it's interesting. I think that COVID actually works in your favor, because there's going to be such a restructuring of air travel. What was the very commonplace thing of business class travel, for example, what some of the things that we've been doing in our own analysis is that we feel it's quite plausible that business travel is going to be cut by 10%. That means 1 trip out of 10 you don't need anymore, because we're going to use Zoom or an equivalent. Because travel budgets are going to be one of the first things that get revisited in a very harsh light. which means that if you do need to send someone on a trip, which is kind of long, and you do want your salesperson, because in the end, the people that are doing business travel are trying to be persuasive and selling something wherever they go. They're not being sent to just be seen. They need to sell a brand or a service or a thing. They need to be on their game. And no one is immune from jet lag. I don't care who you are. So the timing on this particular idea could be very auspicious for you.
Yeah, well, I think you're right on all those points, Addison. And I'll say, the head of commercial travel for McKinsey made this point in a couple of good articles last year, which is saying, okay, look, if you're a travel director or a travel manager for a large, let's say, consulting firm or a large company, you are obviously focused on getting your workers from point A to point B rested and ready to do business the next day. What you don't care about is a $12 steak or whatever films are available on board necessarily. So if we can offer the ability for someone to lay flat and sleep, even if it's relatively short and they might have to be a little bit in the fetal position, but as long as they're rested and able to get a full night's sleep horizontally, that will make all the difference. And if we can do it at a tenth of the cost, that's going to be very interesting for travel departments that are looking to cut costs in the wake of this crisis. I think also from the airlines perspective, this is also a very auspicious time to enter the market, because let's remember, it's not just about what is the cost and how are cost recalculations happening as a result of COVID on the passenger side or on the customer side, but it's also what is the reality of flight capacities and inventories as we come out of this. And the reality is, not only are they going to be severely hit even in 2021, but the recovery is going to be, I think, sort of a bit of a shaky one. And so it's going to be hard to know as we go into 2021 and 2022, how much of that demand is going to be permanently taken off by things like Zoom, like you described, how much is going to be downgraded from more expensive lie-flat options to less expensive options, and finally, on which kind of routes, and particularly between domestic and international routes, are we going to see a recovery happen at a slower or a faster rate? And I think what PM First is designed to do for airlines is really offer a very flexible tool so that you can optimize all of that inventory on a flight-by-flight basis. So again, going to that first big goal of low-cost long haul, which is how do you maximize all of the seats on your airplane? And if you're seeing that demand is volatile or is marked by uncertainty as the recovery happens on a slower or greater pace on different kind of routes, we want to be able to offer the airline something so that they can do that. They can maximize their use of the airplane, even if it's different 1 week to the next, 1 month to the next, 1 year to the next.
That sounds great, Phil.
Yeah.
Thank you. I guess, if there are any further questions, the defense.
I do have one on the privacy side of things, actually. Yeah. So the privacy curtain seems to be going basically from headrest to headrest. I know all too well from sort of often being sort of either in the row immediately behind or immediately in front of that sort of Euro business magic curtain that gets drawn between business class and economy. There's nothing that sort of piques people's interest more than drawing a curtain, which suggests that there's something to hide behind, right? Did you explore the option of trying to do something, and I realize that this requires more certification, that would be not necessarily floor to ceiling, but at least sort of floor to overhead bin or floor to PSU level privacy, given the inherent nosiness of people and the fact that people are like, what is this? Shall I stare at the occupant now? Which sort of defeats the whole privacy goal, right?
Sure. Well, I think, you are right that the certification requirements change pretty significantly when you look at a floor to ceiling enclosure or having a kind of top enclosure, particularly for entrance and egress and access to different kinds of, parts of the, for example, call button and different kind of things. Down the line, that could certainly be an option. But where we sit right now is what we've tried to do is obviously maximize the ease of use and how quickly this can be taken on and off of the airplane. but also to create that private space so that even if you're not, let's say, covered with on the horizontal space above you, that when you're lying in these, you feel very much that you're enclosed. And with the curtain, it means that you're not seeing anybody on the other side. So the feeling of privacy is totally there. And that by having those kind of also interior sort of lighting, that also allows to kind of define the space. So rather than just, having a flat surface that you might have on Sky Couch, between the curtain and the light, you really feel that you're totally enclosed. And so what we've also recommended to airlines as we talk to them about how to roll this out even on an ancillary basis is to be grouping these beds kind of near the back of the plane. So that we can use sort of the least valuable real estate on the plane otherwise. Second, so that we can choose one of the more quiet areas of the plane for people to be sleeping. And third, precisely so to minimize traffic and to be able to increase that privacy aspect and have them all bundled together. So hopefully you're not having somebody, that's sitting normally staring across the aisle at a curtain or staring, behind them and in front of them having these beds. So they'll all be sort of grouped together so that sort of like
I mean, that instantly seems to be something to perhaps take a look at, that grouping, only in that whether you're on a narrow body or a wide body, the back of the plane is the noisiest part from pure air noise. It's also where the galleys and the lavs tend to be. I know that I would not necessarily want to be sleeping next to the lavatory. I wonder if the answer is instead the sort of any model, which is obviously the, group them towards the front of the cabin, which makes it a lot easier when it comes to sort of upgrading frequent flyers, etc., or group them at the rear of one cabin where you're only adjusting to a galley rather than a lav or something like that. But if you want people to pay more for them, I think you will get some people going, especially frequent flyers, going, I'm not sitting next to the lavatories, right? And depending on airline, I mean, in terms of the galleys, I would not worry if it was Singapore Airlines, right? If it's United, 100% those flight attendants can be chatting all night, right, with the lights on full.
Sure.
And sorry to someone nice, they're not the only airline where I would have concerns there, right? I would. That I think is more of a deal breaker for more people than perhaps we think it might be.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think what you described there, which is putting them in at the back of a cabin section, right? So if you would have a forward cabin section, perhaps at the behind the premium economy seating, where you still have rows of standard economy seats, but they can be filled, for example, with PM first cabins as suites as necessary. Then you at least minimize the lavatory interaction. But you still are able, what's interesting for us, and again, for what we can offer to airlines is on the ancillary basis, is to say, okay, if you're going to have these unsold seats, why don't we keep the unsold seats, as we do for crew rest, for example, be the last few rows, right? So that as the plane fills up, beyond, for example, what they might predict for a load factor on that particular flight, they can just keep those rows blocked and then assign them progressively towards the back as necessary. So it helps to be able to actually maximize the number of seats that you're filling. But I absolutely take your point, and I think that there's spaces, inside the plane that can still achieve that back of the cabin feeling without necessarily being back of the plane.
Yeah, and I also think to an extent that argument may be mooted slightly by the rise in basic economy, where more and more people are paying or are choosing not to pay to reserve seats in advance and expecting them to be assigned at the airport. So you may get out of it a little easier there.
Yeah, and sure. And of course, if you think about models, like Southwest, where there's no seating, assigned seating at all, this kind of thing becomes very, very easy. But we think that even for full service airlines that offer assigned seating, that the requirements to actually to implement this, we like to say that it requires no back-end changes to reservation systems. It requires no back-end changes to seat assignment systems. And essentially, you can just achieve it using existing seat blocking. So we want to minimize the kind of impact on the airline, particularly in the first instance. But we think as the product progresses, we can think, and we've already modeled out different, much more sophisticated ways to implement this product. They could include much more dynamic seat assignments for these cabins, or to place them in different kind of areas, or as we talked about before, to have them in a pre-booked kind of model, which again, then would just require a different kind of pricing system and rejigging the booking system a little bit. Certainly possible. It's just a question of, how much of a toe dip in the water do different airlines want to take on this product before realizing how great it is and how much passengers love it, and then be able to implement it on a way where they can capture more of that value by doing the kind of things that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for a great conversation, gentlemen.
Great. Thank you, Addison. And it's very good to see you again, John, and happy that you're on
Always
the
a
call
pleasure.
here. Yeah.